Welcome to Let's Talk About Love, Stories from Everywhere. I'm your host, Jill Ferguson. And I want to take a moment before I introduce my guest for today to say thank you for those of you who have watched our previous interviews and have reached out and talked to us about the kind of intrusiveness that our white branding screen had behind me. I appreciate your feedback, and we have removed the screen, as you can see. And we look forward to more feedback. So feel free to reach out if you have some comments about the show or if you'd like to be a guest on the show. So my guest today is the fabulous Olivia Chadwick, who is talking to us from Saskatoon, Canada, I believe. Is that where you are, for real? Yeah. And Olivia has been a trainer. She's a kinesiologist. She has a podcast called She Knew Better. And she also has a book coming out at the beginning of June. On June 3rd, you will see 17 Runs, which is a book she's written with Garnet Morris. And we are so excited to have her for a guest on our show today. Hi, Olivia.
Hi, Jill. So happy to be here.
So tell me a little bit about the book. What is the book?
17 Runs is a personal development / business book that journeys with a person called Garnet Morris, a prolific business entrepreneur, very successful, and myself at a time when we first met about 13 years ago. Garnet came to me when I was in a role as a trainer, and he was looking for somebody to help him achieve some fitness goals. He had been on this big health transformation. And what transpired as a part of that journeying together was my role switched from being the coach to the client to one of being the mentee to the mentor. Really similar appeal to a book called Tuesdays with Maury, which is one of Garnet and I's favorite. We take you through the evolution of our relationship on that journey together, but it's the evolution also of ourselves and ultimately the transformation of ourselves.
So it sounds like it has a little bit of memoir in it, maybe some personal history and stories in addition to life lessons.
Yeah, I think because it is life lessons and we want them to be deep and meaningful, impactful, they have to be contextualized with the challenges that we've been faced with and are going through. So there's narrative woven in so you can understand a little bit of where we came from to get to where we were trying to go.
And why the title 17 Runs?
Well, we literally were running, typically when we're having these deep conversations. And, I have this strong, coming from that physiology background, I definitely have a lens of life of a lot of metaphors between the challenges of doing difficult things through movement, like a controlled environment, like we decide to do different things, and life just throwing us difficult things, and how one can really help and prepare us for the challenges that life offers. We literally did run, and 17 because the initiation of the book was really to be able to give the book to my 17-year-old son. That age that, if any of us can remember back to that period of time in our life, and I'm sure many of us have sort of blanked it out because it was just so hard, that huge transition, that idea of we know we're made for something, and everyone's telling us that we have so much potential, but we don't know how we're gonna figure it out. It just feels completely overwhelming. And we think that probably happens to many people. I think that happens throughout life. As somebody in the book, I'm sort of having my own midlife crisis as is sort of Garnet, because we are constantly evolving. We are often having to figure out, well, who am I? But never as intensely as when you're 17.
Okay, that makes total sense. And so your son now is 17, right?
He is currently 17. Yeah. Difficult times, I'm not gonna lie. For everyone.
So what are some of the lessons you learned during it was a year, right, that you spent together as far as training goes?
Yeah. I mean, it actually probably was a little longer than that, but the book definitely chronicles that first year where we were really getting to know one another and learn about the similarities that happened in each of our lives. I grew up in England, and Garnet grew up in the Prairie Province in Canada.
And there's about a 30-year age gap
There's
between
a
there, right?
30-year age gap, and yet there's so many parallels to experiences that happened, whether they be circumstances or trauma or familial dysfunction. We went through really similar challenges, and a lot of the narrative that we share is those challenges and how they helped form our relationship because we really understood where each other came from. So the book is Garnet is 30 years older, and so he's able to reflect back in a much more retrospective way than I am, but also realize how overcoming many of those challenges allowed him to have the success in life that he has. And so he had this real great vision of the book as sort of a legacy project, sort of saying, if I could overcome these things, there's absolutely no reason why other people can't. And so in the book, he's sort of crystallizing that wisdom and also giving it to me as somebody who is going through a difficult time, and he felt like he could help guide me and help me see the way forward into the next evolution of myself.
So you just hit on something that's really powerful, right? Which is the fact that if we're open to it, any interactions that we have as human beings with another human being, or I could probably even throw out animals too, right, into this mix.
Oh yeah,
other types of animals besides humans. That it's a give and take teaching situation. Very rarely is there a time where just one of us is the recipient of the information, where we're not transferring information to somebody else too, right?
I believe that as like a parent. I think many people can relate to that as a parent, where they feel like their kids are teaching them things about life that they really need to learn, which seems sort of strange. And of course, our elders have so much wisdom to teach us. So yeah, I think we should be constantly gathering information from people around us who have their own lived experience, or their own, with children, it's more their own unmasked perception of the world, without social norms and without sort of concretized family belief systems. Then they can really see the world without a lot of bias.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So in some of the lessons that you've learned throughout your life, right, you have decided to impart to other people, not just in this book. Right? Mm-hmm. You started a company called the Body Kindness Collective. Mm-hmm. Right. And what's the purpose of that company? Because I feel like these are things you're really passionate about and that you would love.
Yeah, right? Totally. Yeah. Yeah. So just for context, like I worked in the fitness industry for 20 years. Without going too much into the backstory of even that, in my early youth years, like in my mid-teens, I had an eating disorder. And learning to get agency in my body and confidence in my body through sport was like one very large leap on my healing journey. And that led me into a path of kinesiology. And I loved it. I loved learning about the body. Learning about the body gives you so much more respect for your body and so much more curiosity about your body. Movement help teaches you embodiment. So this idea of like being able to fully inhabit your body, like I understand my hunger cue, I understand when I'm full, and I have a relationship with that. And that's more important to me than some externalized understanding of what I should be eating or what I shouldn't be eating. From the myriad of messages that we get constantly about that particular perspective. And so I'm in my kinesiology degree and I'm learning a lot about the body. And I was enamored then to get out into the world and share this knowledge because I'm just an enthusiastic learner and I love to, tell other people cool facts about their body. But then when I got out into the world and I was working, as a personal trainer, that knowledge was helpful to such a small extent. I really didn't have the skills to understand how to help people navigate why they were actually coming and seeking exercise in the first place. And it ended up being such a huge component of the work that I did, because we know that 90% of people engage in exercise due to the size and shape of their body. But so much of their beliefs around that are through diet culture or through social norms, through projected ideas of how their body should look or how their body should behave and perform. And for years, I was trying to grapple with, well, how do I apply this knowledge of how all these things exercise could do when I'm trying to work through why people were coming to see me, because they weren't actually aligned. Those weight perspectives weren't aligned. And through many new other trainings, like gaining a cultural lens and analysis and understanding body image, I went back to school to do sports psychology because I really needed to understand, like, how can we help people divest from the belief that their body is broken or unworthy or unlovable or flawed in some way because it doesn't align with the 1% ideal that the culture presents. And the many, many facets of that, right? Like I could go on for days about what I'm really talking about when we're talking about that, but I think people intuitively know or can reflect on it in themselves. And so the Body Kindness Collective is this idea of, like, if we really are going to pursue health, what does health even really mean? Is it just the size and shape of your body? What about your mental health? What about the relationship that you have with your body? What about your relationship with food? And a lot of this is informed by, narratives from childhood, things that people have told us about our body, things that people have told us about how we eat, what we eat. And the work of the Body Kindness Collective is to start to engage in, things that are good for the body, like eating well and sleeping and taking care of the body, but from the perspective of compassion towards yourself, of treating yourself as whatever you need is the most important thing that you need to honor and understand, and trying to unlearn a lot of the stories we've been told.
So it's your inner wisdom, right? A lot of it is your inner wisdom, is understanding what you need, because the messages change so often, right? People told that, low fat's the way to go, and then you're told that no, you need a lot more fat, and butter's good, butter's bad, all these different, meat's good, meat's bad, vegetables are always good, we know that. But
unless, of course, you have IBS, in which case they're bad.
I was going to say, but the way they're prepared can be questionable, and your body could be having issues with specific foods. And there's a whole lot of story around all of it that may or may not be appropriate for you as an individual.
Yeah. And this is so true. And, there are lots of times and lots of scenarios where this is all knowledge that can be helpful to have. I'm sure everybody knows somebody, or maybe experienced themselves, where learning something about how food impacts their body, or learning about how a movement impacts their body, was helpful knowledge to have. But what we don't often pay attention to, or we're often not even aware of, is our unconscious belief that all of this is relevant to our weight, and how that ultimately is the bottom line, the ultimate marker of whether or not we're taking care of our health. And this is not evidence-based, even though we hear it a lot in the culture. We're starting to hear that, so you can be fit, and that's the most ultimate thing, whether or not it changes the size and shape of your body. That's what the clinical evidence is saying, and that is actually true. But then if you have somebody engage in an exercise program and their body doesn't change, they oftentimes have a hard time staying motivated to continue the exercise. So at some point, people engaging in exercise, we have to find other reasons to be there. And that is an internal journey in and of itself, whether it's I'm noticing my mood, or if I'm noticing my mood and then how I show up as a parent, like these real heart-centered ways of operating in the world that you can trace back to how you cared for yourself in some particular way.
So what's kind of a takeaway message that you'd love everybody to know about this particular topic? And I think you've touched on it little bits here and there. But
I think ultimately it comes back to the relationship that you have with yourself, unlearning the things that people have told you about yourself, and really coming back home to your body and the care and the respect that you can have for your well-being.
Nice. So besides fitness, which you're clearly passionate about in kinesiology, what other things do you love? Are you doing? I mean, you're going on this book journey now, right? The first book ever is coming out. What are some of the other things that just light you up?
Well, the book is all about personal development, and personal development is what really lights me up. Like, I love fitness because it's a growth experience. right?
Mhm.
I love learning about health because it's a growth experience. So if you take everything that I do back down to its core, it's opportunities for learning and growth. That's definitely, rooted in my value system, and that it shows up in sport. Like, I'm always involved in sport in some capacity, as you already know, Jill. Like, that what really lights me up right now. Then we just quit everything and just go ride horses 24/7. That would honestly be what I would do. Fortunately, I don't get to do that, so I'm forced to do these other things in the world, which I know are really, really important. I've been on all these journeys, and now I help walk other people through their journeys, and that's super important and valuable in the world. And I love doing that work. The book, we said, straddles personal development and business. And as a heart-centered person, I know the show is about
Yeah.
being heart-centered. We say personal growth and development and business because we know business is an audience that you can really target a book at. But for me, business for me is just about personal growth and development. Being an entrepreneur is just to challenge myself, to learn new skills, to build relationships, to do hard things, to do things I never thought of, to create a bigger vision. So even though it may be not like this hard-hitting business book, to me, it's the only sort of business that I want to be a part of, right?
Yeah.
The one where I'm challenging myself and growing as a human.
Well, and your book has parts in it where you ask reflective questions. You ask people to answer the kinds of things that you're doing, that you're talking about in within the text of the book for themselves, right? To reflect on, like, one of the things you talk about, you guys refer to as bricks, which in other language could be called like limiting beliefs, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things I think that you mentioned, actually, that I think is really unique is the fact that some of these bricks actually can be our superpowers. Where, I think we get this idea that we think that something is impeding us from, or it's the way we're looking at it is more the way that's impeding us, as opposed to, and the example that comes to mind is when Garnet talks about, having ADHD, where, he always, as a child, thought that was an issue, right? Where he's realizing as an adult that it's having that as part of his superpower and his success in the businesses that he has, and the way that his brain works is different. So that's a superpower for him.
Right.
And so it's understanding that these bricks that we have, these limiting belief systems, whether or not we need to either adjust our thinking with them, or whether they're things we need to overcome, remove, take a sledgehammer to and blast it down to rubble, and then go to get the dust away, or whether they're things that we just haven't been looking at right, for ourselves.
Right.
And our own growth.
Yeah.
So I think that, and so those, in the context of the book, you're asking people to, hey, this is one of the lessons. Now take some time and some thought, and really, explore your own heart, your own mind, and see how this speaks to you and shows up in your own space.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there might be a plan to do a little bit of workbooks and stuff in the future to help people dive deeper into these topics.
The goal of the book is to have an impact, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's always our primary objective, was to think about somebody like Keenan. So it's easy for me to think about my son. And when you're designing these lessons, you're really wanting to give people examples that can, yes, help them take the time. But you and I both know, when you're reading a book, sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. Sometimes we have the capacity and sometimes we don't. So we do want to add more. We want to invest more time and energy into finding spaces and outlets and ways of being creative with the material, so that some way you can find a way to drop in, whether that's video or audio, and all the different ways people like to learn, and be guided through. I truly believe that anything we put energy into, we get value out of, always.
Mm-hmm.
So how can we find different fun ways that people get excited about, to take that self-reflective time Because if they do, we know it will have an impact. But getting somebody to actually do that is our challenge, right? To help them move the needle. What I loved about you talking about the bricks, though, I just want to tune back into that, because I love that you were talking about Garnet and his ADHD, because a lot of bricks are, or most bricks actually, these ideas of limiting beliefs are not personal limitations. They're ways in which either our family systems or systems within structures within society or within our culture have led us to believe that there's something inherently about us that is flawed or unworthy in some way. And whether we're aware of it or not, that has carved a path in our life that potentially has led us to believe that we need to stay small, we need to stay comfortable, we shouldn't try certain things, we shouldn't hang out with certain people, we shouldn't go certain places. And then the gym is the most basic example of that, right? Like if you don't identify as somebody who goes to the gym, then how would you ever feel comfortable going to the gym? Because that's not how you identify as somebody who does that. Maybe you don't feel like you're athletic. Maybe you think that you don't dress the part, look the part, act the part, whatever that might be. But ultimately, exercise, let's say in this scenario, strength training or engaging in some cardio, is designed for everybody. So it's something about the social culture within a gym that has led you to believe you can't be a part of it. And the goal is either we create new spaces that are more inclusive, which is certainly happening these days, or we find a new place within ourselves to realize that we do belong. And anything that allows us to believe that we don't, that is the incorrect information that we need to unlearn.
I actually think that that's kind of one of the positive things that came out of the whole COVID mess was that more people learned that, because they couldn't go to the gym because people were on lockdown all over the world, was that like, oh, I can work out at home. There's YouTube videos to help me, right? Do high intensity training, do yoga, do Pilates, do whatever your thing is, right? Run along with these people on a screen. That it kind of, or those people that were used to working out on a treadmill were like, oh, I could run outside now. Like, hey, there's a sidewalk or a street, or, I live close to the ocean and we have a whole pathway system right on the beach that's paved. And so it was forcing people into their uncomfortableness, because a lot of people aren't like, okay, my version of working out happens to be in a gym where it's a safe space and I don't have to deal with too many people because I can put my headphones on or whatever and tune out, right? Where all of a sudden you're forced to make changes, which isn't comfortable, which you guys talk a lot about, leaning into discomfort in your book and what that means for people. But it helped people expand what their definitions of things were.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, exactly. When you basically narrowed the options, less decision making, you can only do it in this space. Now the decision is just, what are you going to do in this space? Yeah, for sure. Definitely no decision overload. Although I do want to sort of make a little caveat there, is that I agree that given the online space, we could present lots of different options that felt more accessible to people. They just had to identify with the option that was presented. But the thing about exercise that I say to people all the time, I think a lot of people feel like if they're not capitalizing on their home gym, that they're failing in some way, or they're not giving them exercise home, they're failing in some way. But here's the thing that I truly do believe is that we are really not designed to do hard things alone. I mean, we might be able to for a short period of time, but hard things are really supposed to be done in relationship with other people, and they become so much easier. And why wouldn't we want to make something that we have to do regularly easier for ourselves as much as possible? So I really think that hard things like exercise should be done in safe environments with encouraging people that allow us to try something and maybe fail, but keep trying because other people are keeping to try. And I see them being able to do it, and I feel like I should be able to do it. And that is one of those metaphors, right, for life, is if you're going through challenges in life, you also shouldn't have to do it alone. You should be able to find spaces that you can ask for help, that feel safe, that you feel like you're going to get the support and encouragement, and you believe in the person who's telling you that you can do it. You believe that they know you well enough to know that you can, right?
Right. I agree totally with that. But that's one of those areas where sometimes our egos, right, jump in and be like, oh, you're going to look stupid. or, oh, they're going to think you don't know anything, right? Like, I don't know how to use this piece of gym equipment, or I'm going to get out. If I'm going to run with a running buddy or a running group for my first time ever, they're going to think I'm crazy because I'm going to huff and puff. And, until we get in that kind of spiraling mindset, as
Yeah.
opposed to showing ourselves some love and compassion, self-love, self-compassion, we're saying, no, everybody started at some point as a beginner, right? It's back to the Buddhist philosophy of everybody has beginner mind all the time, because everybody started at the beginning. Whether, that was 10 years ago for you, or whether that was, next week.
Being a beginner is just like the most uncomfortable feeling in the world. It's so uncomfortable. You feel so self-conscious being a beginner.
But again, that's that societal framework that we talked about, right? And then we suck that into ourselves and make ourselves.
Well, okay.
You think this one's a little different?
Well, because I do think, societal framework, but I actually think it's real. I actually think that you'll go into spaces and you'll be the beginner, and people won't validate you showing up in that space as much as when you're a rock star there, right? Or you do feel like you're constantly trying to fit in just by raising yourself to a level that seems somewhat socially acceptable. And that's not just your internal narrative. That's sometimes your external environment too.
But that's also when you need to lean into the discomfort.
Yeah, it is. But I also think that it takes like a lot of like self-encouragement of like, I often reference back to Joyce Meyer, who's like a well-known evangelical, and you might have many different things that you think about that particular faith or person in particular. But honestly, she would always say in her message, I'm not where I used to be. I'm not where I want to be, but I'm not where I used to be. I'm okay and I'm on my way. And in the work that I do in self-compassion, the ability to be able to say to yourself, I'm okay. Like, yeah, this is really hard, but I'm okay. It just comes up over and over again. When I say to people, what do you need to tell yourself right now? It's often, like a big breath. I'm okay. Like, I can handle this, even though it feels pretty unbearable.
Yeah.
I'm okay. And that self-encouragement, even when you really are not getting a lot of messages that it is okay, is so incredible how powerful it can be.
So I actually have a personal example of that I've never publicly shared.
Okay, do it.
And it is, so I am very, very allergic to cats. Like, I have an EpiPen. I'm so allergic to cats.
Yeah.
So if I get in an enclosed space with a cat, I need lots of Benadryl, and I can usually stay about 40 minutes before I start wheezing and I can't breathe and I need out, right? I need to be out of the space. And I was flying a number of years ago. I was flying from, where were we going? From Toronto to Calgary, I believe. And I ended up on a plane with a cat. And for one of the only times in my life, I had no antihistamines with me. I don't know how. I must have run out. They didn't get restocked in my bag, because I always carry them when I fly. For this along with my EpiPen. Didn't have the EpiPen with me either. And so the plane takes off. It's an hour, and they announced it was going to be like an hour and 17 minutes or something. And I get on the plane, and I'm like, okay, I acknowledge the cat's there to myself. And I start with the "you're going to be okay" message to myself, right? And as the plane's going, my breathing starts getting a little more labored. And Martha Beck, in her book Steering by Starlight, says that, like, we can basically keep telling ourselves that we're going to be okay. And like 98% of the time we'll still be okay. Right. But we get too in our heads, and then our panic kicks in, and then that escalates health issues. And, and there's some times where that doesn't work. But in this case, so I sat on this plane over and over and over again, reminding myself that, number one, I was going to be okay. And number two, I had single thing that I needed in that exact moment, in that second. Like, I clearly, as I'm sitting here, have enough oxygen in this second because I can still breathe, right? Over and over and over again for the hour and 17 minutes.
Wow.
My oxygen sat level was pretty low when I got off the plane. I went to stand up, and my husband grabbed a hold of my arm and walked me off the plane, and we went into the first store we found that sold antihistamines. But I was amazed at how that messaging, telling myself that I was okay, that I had every single thing that I needed in each individual second, kept me safe. It didn't make them have to emergency land the plane,
Right.
and it got me through the situation, right? But so often we don't allow ourselves to do that, right? We get panicked, we get anxious, we get in our heads. But I will say I don't fly without. I still fly with the EpiPen and the antihistamine all the time.
Yeah, if you weren't on the plane, you wouldn't have done it. You'd have left.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. That's such a great example, because it is hard to stay the course, right? If the commitment made to do something that's uncomfortable, it's really hard to stay the course. And if you didn't put yourself in a pretty tight bind where you couldn't really leave, you probably would leave.
Yeah, that's true. But so there's this thing about, like, I feel like I learned a huge lesson that day, right? Even though it seemed pretty freaking scary as I was going through it, right? But I learned that, number one, I have the wherewithal in me to survive things that are super challenging,
right?
Even if it's super medically challenging, right? And that if I didn't care so much about myself, it could have went a lot of different directions, I think.
Yeah. I wonder, like, now that you've been able to practice that, have you used it in other situations because you can reference it so well?
Yeah, sometimes I have. And there's been uncomfortable business situations I've been in, or places where, and I think we've all been in a situation where we have a very clear idea that the person that we have to talk to really doesn't like us. But yet we have a job to do, right? And so, and so it's the same kind of philosophy where you're like, no, I'm okay, and I can do this, right? Well, I need to do what I need to do.
I'm so glad you're naming that, honestly, like exactly the example that you just made, because that's probably my number one discomfort zone, is like when people are giving me like really clear signals that I don't respect you, I don't really like you. And my tendency, I would freak out and I would work really, really hard to try and get that person to like me, which is just total breach of my own self-respect. But I love now that you shared that with me, because I'm going to try internally now in those situations just to be like, I'm okay. I don't need to work any harder. I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm okay. They don't have to like me. It's going to be okay.
Well, and there's plenty of people that would say, well, that's on them. Their dislike of you is their issue. It's not yours. Right. Which, there's some truth to that. But on the other hand, it doesn't matter whose issue it is. So it's just better to let it go.
I don't want to live with it for days. No. That's the problem with that psyche, right? If it's their problem, that's on them. That doesn't help me regulate my nervous system. So then I spend days with energy, and not nice energy. It's pretty not nice energy towards that other person, right? Whereas really, if I just regulated my nervous system better, I wouldn't be so negatively impacted, and then I wouldn't have to have a constant movie going on for multiple days.
Or you try to beat yourself up, right? We've all done that, where we've had to, let's say, public speak or whatever, and or just speak to somebody one-on-one, and you say something, it comes out of your mouth, and then you're like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. And then you're ruminating forever about, like, what did I say? Why did I say that? I shouldn't have said that. I should have said this. And that doesn't do acknowledging it once, like, okay, I probably shouldn't have said that. And maybe even if you need to, because if the thing is rude or whatever, that you need to say that to whoever you said it to.
Yeah.
But then it's time to let it go, right? Because otherwise we just keep giving it energy to something that it doesn't need energy.
Yeah.
And we do ourselves when we do that.
Yeah. And also, this is another thing that I like to reference to people, because what you're referring to in the self-compassion world is called over-identification, that like constant movie playing in your head where you're trying to solve the problem that has now already happened, but the problem can't be solved. That period of time has passed. And that constant movie playing, what I say to people is the problem with playing the movie over and over again is you're concretizing in your brain the neural pathway. So the more you play the movie, just like a movie that you've watched over and over again, you learn the lyrics, you learn the hand gestures, you basically make that neural pathway so easy to access that it becomes almost like, I don't want to go as far as necessarily to say a trauma response, but kind of, and it starts to give you that actually can create internal beliefs, right? If you play a movie regularly enough, it starts to wire in as like part of your belief system. So it becomes like who you are in situations or how you behave, but it's not actually. You might have done it one time, but if you play the movie over and over again, it starts to feel like it's who you are. So being able to like stop that movie and actually self-soothe early enough can help you divest from a belief that that is who you are.
I love that. And that goes along with what I was looking for on my phone, was a quote that I got from somebody last week. Bill Belichick, the former New England Patriots coach, said to live in the past is to die in the present. And I think that fits so well with that, because when you're stuck in that movie, you're living in the past. And so you're not paying attention to what's right here, right now in front of you, or even in the future for that matter.
Yeah. And in doing so, you're really creating a future self experience that it does rob you of lots of opportunities, right? Because if I believe that I behave in certain situations this way, then I'm probably not going to put myself in those situations anymore, because I don't like who I am when I'm in those situations. So I will remove myself from them, so.
That's an excellent point. Yeah.
Social learning is the hardest.
Oh, and it becomes even harder, right, for people that are so stuck in social media, because that's a whole different kind of social learning, and it may not be all that genuine at times, I think.
Yeah, it's a tough world to operate in. I don't really know well enough. I think they call me, I'm in the last year of like the geriatric millennials. So I feel pretty analog-y still. I definitely didn't come through those years where, it wasn't a teen with social media. So it remains to be seen the impact that has on the psyche, I think. So.
But you have kids, so
I do. I am one of
it.
those parents that, like, my son had a flip phone until last year, Yeah. Not that we didn't try earlier, but if we tried to dabble, earlier in his years, like maybe starting from around 12, but unfortunately it wasn't something that he was able to regulate himself.
Okay.
My son also has ADHD, I should mention. And so there's something about the wiring of the brain with the way his ADHD expresses that in any ADHD brain, I think time is a very foreign concept. But for him particularly, you get on the phone and an hour passes and he would genuinely look up and say, I've only been using it for 5 minutes. And you're like, whoa, we just went into the time-space continuum. Like, that is not what just happened. And he's genuinely serious. So, it just wasn't something that his brain could handle really well.
Well, you're like, no, your smartphone, tracks how long you're using it and on what kind of things. So
yeah, we were definitely like the helicopter parents in that area of like tracking it and seeing how many hours he was on it for and whatever, because it wasn't something that was great for his brain. So anyways, yeah, I don't necessarily have those kids that are using it.
So tell me a little bit about your podcast, She Knew Better.
Yeah, so my podcast actually started off as the Wellness Compass podcast. So being sort of in a more of a health field and dealing with so much, like trying to help people get, real evidence-based or at least expert information about their health and well-being was the goal. And from a holistic approach. So to stop making it just this sort of very medicalized biomedical model or at least biotechnology model that we see a lot of. On social media, and make it more about, emotional health and mental health and bringing in experts in those areas to sort of widen our lens and give us truthful information. That was the original intent. But I realized that after, doing a dozen or so interviews, that really what I got most excited about was when we were helping not just unlearn sort of health and what was true about that, but why we were, believing anything alternative in the first place. So what I mean by that is why we have self-doubt about ourselves in the first place, as women in particular. So the show really is geared towards women. She knew better. So this idea of like, the roles that we play, the systemic barriers that we face, the narratives that we learn about our body and our value in the world. So experts on something called like objectification theory or on body image to help us really unpack what's going on for us internally. And what happened to me and what I find with lots of people is we have this belief, well, it's just me. I don't really know if other people are having this internal experience, but it's just me. So start to realize that actually this is an internal experience of many, many women. In fact, if not most. Mm-hmm. But then also start to realize, like, not only is it just not just your internal experience, it's not because of you that you're having that internal experience, right? It's because you've been given information that's led you to believe something about yourself that's actually not true. So for instance, I had an expert, which actually was one of the most watched shows on self-objectification theory, which was a really important theory in body image that I learned in my master's degree. And when I learned it, and this theory is now almost 30 years old, I was reading it going like, I don't understand why nobody's ever explained this to me, because this helps me understand myself so much more and help me realize that what I thought was like mental illness or like disordered belief about my own body was actually just what I learned through the culture. It's not like I had a broken brain. My brain, if it was broken in some particular way, it's because the culture had broken it in a particular way. So self-objectification is this realization that if we sexualize women and we teach them to see themselves as sexual bodies, they over time will want to project that sexuality out into the world, i.e., I'm no longer somebody who lives in my house. I'm somebody who stands out the front of my house and observes the house so that they can see it through the lens of which all my neighbors see the house. They'll never know the inside, but now nor do I, because I'm constantly monitoring through body surveillance and, measuring myself, body checking myself, creating beauty standards around how I present myself. I spend so much of my mental energy doing that. I can't spend any time in my body. And the impact that has on, like, if we're spending all our mental energy on those things, when are we building careers? When are we establishing relationships that are about other people? And when are we fully showing up as our authentic selves? Because I actually don't know what's my authentic self, because I'm just worried about how myself is perceived by other people. If you felt any of those things about yourself, that's not because you're this vain, immodest person. This is because this is what you've learned as a way to protect yourself in a world that's told that you're only valuable if you show up in this particular way. Things like that are on the show, so that you can start to realize, what is the truth of who you are now that you know this information about how the world operates.
I think that you just tapped into a lot of the beliefs and the forward-facing influencer culture, right? Because in social media, that's what they're doing, and it's been very interesting to see, like, without all the filters and all the other stuff, right, that people are doing to make them fit that model that you just talked about. Right.
I think
so many products, and no, it's fine. It's just, there's so many products, and electronic products and real products, right, that are geared towards that. Mm-hmm. to make us all think that we're not enough as we are, and that we have to be different. And I mean, it's advertising 101, but
and I think it's really complex, right? Because it's not just then saying, well, now I just won't engage in any of those things.
No.
Right? It's not that. So we have to find this really sort of directs a self-determined, nuanced path, you know? Some people, well, I remember for years, I was thinking about this the other day, I'm bringing it up. I couldn't wear dangly earrings. Well, I was just telling you I don't always feel comfortable wearing red, but I wore it for you, Jill, so we wear your brand color. So, because feeling that sort of like seen in the world is slightly uncomfortable for me. And you have to sort of wonder why, right?
Yeah.
Or that I couldn't wear like big dangly earrings for a really long time. I just felt like I was putting myself out there in a way that was really uncomfortable for me. So for somebody like myself, you know, being able to wear those things is actually an expression of building my own self-esteem and confidence. Like if I can wear them and feel like comfortable doing that. So it's not just, you know, I wear fancy jewelry and now I'm an influencer who wears fancy jewelry. You know, there might be internally for somebody, the ability to do that helps them own themselves in a different way. But it's very self-known, right? Nobody can judge which version of that. It's the intention behind all of it, you know?
Well, and you really have to figure that out for yourself, right? Yeah. So what's one more thing before we run out of time that you love about life and the work that you do? And
I'm going to try and hone in on the love part there. You know, you and I were I was just in LA. I got to see you. And as you know, I was there with Garnet and Shirley, who travel a lot around the world. And Garnet's 70 now, and Shirley is in her 60s. And as part of the work that we're doing together, Garnet's compiling this, you know, big email list. And if I know Garnet really well, on the Myers-Briggs, he measures as an introvert. And he would say that he lost a lot of his friends through his divorce, right, as can often happen. And so he shared that a lot of the people on that list and a lot of the people that he now knows, he met in the last 10 years. And then when I got to travel with them and see how they interact with people and how much energy, like mental energy, they give to every single person that they spend time with, was like really inspiring to me. So I don't know if this really answers your questions, but I love that we can learn that there are versions of us that we have yet to step into that are really exciting. And being with them, I'm an extrovert, so I think of myself as like somebody who likes to spend time with people. And yet I was like, I could really up my game here. You know, I could really, when I meet people, spend more time asking questions and really wanting to get to know them and just find a way to have more capacity to have bigger connections with people when I met them. So I love that we still get to learn, and I love that the best version of us has yet to be expressed. And who knows where the inspiration is going to come for that next version.
Well, and I would also add to that, not just for you, but for all of us, me, and for everybody, I think, is that we also have the opportunity and the chance to evolve into whatever we would like to, right? So you're saying, hey, I can step up more and I can be more outgoing and do real authentic connections, right? Because I know that, you know, we've had talks about the fact that we don't do the lying thing. We believe in being generous with time and energy, and we don't want to be shallow with the connections that we have. And so we can make a conscious decision to, hey, I'm going to show love in whatever that means to me, to everybody around me, in any interaction that I have.
Yeah.
Right. And whether that's, you know, saying, hi, I like your hair to a barista, or complimenting an outfit, or, you know, whatever, or whether that's actually seeing somebody and say, how are you really doing today? And wanting to hear the real answer, not, oh, I'm fine, or it's okay, that we so often do.
Yeah.
People do. Really.
Yeah. All the time. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's beautiful.
So,
So, where can our listeners find you if they want to get in touch with you?
Well, right now,
about training or anything.
Yeah, right now, I would love people to join us on the journey as the book evolves and the book community evolves. So Life Lessons on the Run is on Instagram. It's just one long string on word, Life
Okay.
Lessons on the Run. If they're wanting to connect with me personally as a coach in that capacity, then I do recommend reaching out through Instagram as well, actually, Olivia J. Chadwick on Instagram. Because then people can just decide to follow you for a while. And I love that, right? You follow somebody for a while and then you realize like, no, this is really for me. I align with this person. I relate to this person. So I think that's a great way to start connecting and reach out, DM
And your
me.
podcast is available anywhere podcasts are, right?
It is.
Spotify, yeah.
Yes, please come listen to my podcast. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's also a website for the book where people can, email you, message you through there. It's 17runs.com, and it's 17 the number.
17 the number, runs.com. And if you do message me through there, like I directly get that email. So it's like you're just emailing me. So go ahead and do that. I think those are all the best places. Yeah.
Wonderful. Any last words of wisdom, advice?
I'm going to wear red more. Maybe everyone should wear red more.
There you go. I like it. Stand in your power.
I love you in red. Like as soon as I saw you in red, I was like, oh, Jill's in red. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, and I think the blue too on you because it pops your eyes.
Okay,
right?
I'll just be primary
bright colors. Bright colors. You can wear them. So,
cool.
Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks,
Had
Jill.
a wonderful time.
I love hanging out with you. It's the best.
Me too. I feel like you're a long lost sister. I don't have any sisters.
Yeah, we're connected. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you.